Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Network podcast, brought to you by PlayNFC.com.
And yes, welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Network podcast. I'm your host, of course, Greg Ambrosius, and I'm joined today by a special guest as we welcome in NFBC and NFFC high stakes player, Larry Schechter. Larry, how are you doing?
I'm good, Greg. How are you?
I'm doing good. You look like you're doing better than me, though. You're in this palace in Boca Raton, Florida. What's the weather like down there?
Yeah, it's a palace. I'm at Mar-a-Lago hanging out with Trump.
Well, I'm the farthest away.
Trump's in my home fantasy baseball league.
I'm the farthest away from that, as you can see. I'm at a cottage in the northern Wisconsin. I think the high today was like 68 with 10-mile-an-hour winds out of the north. It's been freezing up here while the rest of the country is burning up. So a little bit different for you and me. But you're enjoying the good life down in Florida, are you?
I am, yep.
Very good, very good. All right, now I know Ron Chandler's down there. Did you move down there because Ron went down there, or did he follow you?
I think I followed him, but it was strictly coincidence.
Okay, explain.
No, I did not move here because of Ron Chandler. And I didn't move here because Craig Mish is down here and some other people are here. I moved down here for the no offense to Ron or Craig Mish. I moved down here, the weather, the taxes. I mean, I lived in the north my entire life until I came here about 7 or 8 years ago.
Right.
And I hate the winter.
Yeah.
So it's like being up north in the winter is just stupid.
Yeah. Tell me about it. I don't know why I still stay here. Again, I've got an umbilical cord attached to Lambeau Field. If I could just cut that off, then I would move down south in the winter. But hey, you've had a long and successful history in our fantasy sports industry. I got to ask you, when did you start playing fantasy sports? I mean, how did you get started? We all have these tales of college buddies or work buddies or whatever. What's your story?
Well, my story is not like that. My story is, I mean, as a lot of people, I did play like Stratomatic and APBA when I was younger, but I was never in a league with those. I played by myself pretty much. And fantasy sports, approximately 1990, I was living in Boston, and one day I heard an ad on the radio for something called World of Sports, who had a fantasy baseball league. And I called and, I signed up. They had a draft that was held on a conference call over the phone.
Really?
Yeah. And that was the first I had ever heard of fantasy sports.
Huh.
Just this ad. They weren't very big and they didn't last very long, maybe a year or two. And then they went out of business. And then I saw an ad, I saw an ad for the CDM. I probably either in the sporting, must have been the Sporting News, I saw the ad. Mm-hmm. And so I joined CDM, and then that was kind of it. I was in CDM for many, many years. That led me to getting into Labor and then Tout Wars. And somewhere along the line, I heard about NFBC and NFFC and joined those.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to talk to you about the Diamond Challenge, but did you do just baseball at that time then, or how'd you get into football as well? Because you're a prominent football player.
Well, I don't remember exactly. I think I did only baseball for a couple of years, and of course I like football too, so I got in that pretty quickly. And at some point, I also did basketball. I did basketball for several years, and I quit that. When I decided to write a book, that was very time consuming, and I decided that year I'm going to take a year off from basketball and have more time to work on my book. And basketball also, I really liked it, but it always became a pain when baseball season started.
Yeah.
Because by the time when baseball season started, when I started doing drafts and the season started, my basketball teams were kind of like a pain in the ass at that point. You'd have to manage them the last month or whatever.
Yeah.
When baseball started. So I took a year off for writing my book, and I actually never went back, and I never missed it.
Yeah. Basketball's a little different. All right. So I know that's what I was going to say. I knew of you from the CDM Diamond Challenge. That's how we first met. You were the first 2-time Diamond Challenge national champion, back-to-back years. What years were those? Are you still the only person who's won back-to-back that great contest?
It wasn't back to back. It was 2002 and 2005.
Okay.
And one guy, I for a while I was the only two-time winner, but another guy, I think it's Dave Petrozzilio.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think I pronounced his name wrong. He won. He ended up winning a second time also the overall championship for baseball. And one thing that people don't generally know or remember, it's not really that big a deal anyway, is I also won the CDM. It was actually the Sporting News Playoff Baseball Challenge.
Okay.
When the Miami Marlins won the World Series in 1997, one of my teams had the Marlins and Cleveland, who played in the World Series.
Yep.
So the two of them making it to the World Series, had a great team. I won. So I'm actually have 3 CDM Hall of Fame shirts. One is actually a Sporting News shirt, and because they were CDM did it with the Sporting News in like '93 to '98 or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. All right. So that's how I first met you. Was you came to Labor because that's when John Hunt started, I believe, the regular Joes, and you came in. Charlie brought you in because I think you were the CDM champion. Was that then 2003 or something?
Well, yeah, that was when CDM worked out a deal with John Hunt that the Labor winner would get to play in the next. I mean, so the CDM overall winner would get to play next year's Labor.
Okay.
And I think it was Josh Paley might have been the first guy that did that. And then when I won in 2005. That's when that happened. I got into Labor 2006, just for the 1 year. But after that, I hooked up with Sandlot Shrink. I started doing a little bit of work with the Sandlot Shrink, and I represented them in Labor for several years, and then also Tout Wars.
So have you been in it every year since then?
Yeah, since 2006. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah. So you wrote a book, like you said, called Winning Fantasy Baseball. Talk about why you wrote that. What's in that book? I know it's still available on Amazon.
Yep. I just got the idea 10, 11 years ago for some reason that I just wanted to share all my strategy and write a book about it. And so the book is essentially telling people the strategy from A to Z, as far as like how you value players, how you conduct a draft, in-season strategy, different formats. There's a chapter on option strategy, snake draft, salary cap. So really, somebody who's never played the game before could read that book, and they could be prepared to go to a draft. Just based on that. I know there's a lot of things have been written that are kind of like piecemeal. Like maybe there's some piece about auction strategy, or some article about snake drafts, or other articles about how to project players. And I wanted to put it all in one place. And it's been out for like 10 years, but it's all still valid. It's none of it is outdated. A lot of it also applies to other fantasy sports. A lot of it you could use for football or basketball or whatever.
So talk about the salary cap format, that Diamond Challenge. What did you like about that, and why were you so successful in that format?
What I liked about it is for one thing, it was a fair contest where you could get whoever you want based on the salaries they were offering. I also like it because I think there's less luck involved than in other formats. Because in any other format, if you get Mike Trout or Aaron Judge or somebody and they get hurt, you're screwed. And in a salary cap, if you have Aaron Judge and he gets hurt, you just pick up Mike Trout or Bryce Harper or somebody. So it costs you a move, but you're getting pretty much an equal player. It's not killing your whole year.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of killing, bad segue, but I did want to talk to you. We're lucky that you're here today, right? A year ago at this time, if I recollect, you were in the hospital, probably in a coma. And I think a lot of people don't realize this. And you look very good right now for the condition that you were in.
Yeah.
But tell people what happened. I believe you had a heart attack, what you should have done when you started seeing the signs, and then what happened to you a year ago at this time.
All right. You want the short, medium, or long?
No, go ahead. Let people know what happened. It's an amazing story.
All right. Well, It was a little over a year ago. I think it was April 27th, 2022. On a Thursday afternoon, I just all of a sudden started feeling bad and had to get in bed. And I spent about 48 hours mostly in bed, feeling like I got a fever, flu, whatever, throwing up. Called my doctor a couple times. He prescribed some antibiotics or something. And it seemed like I had the flu or possibly COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And my doctor said, just you're going to have to give it a couple of days for the antibiotics to take effect. He said, whether it's the flu or COVID, it's going to work. But my girlfriend really got concerned, and she was encouraging me, like, why don't you go to the hospital and get checked out? Because it seemed to her like I was getting worse instead of better.
Mm-hmm.
So she finally convinced me. We called an ambulance, because if she could have driven me to the hospital, but then I would have to wait around the ER for 4 hours waiting to get back, and I was in no condition to do that. So I called the ambulance, and they come, and I'm going to the hospital in an ambulance, and I'm 100%. This is either the flu or COVID, and I'm going to find out which one it is and whether or not they can do something to help me. When I get to the hospital, by the time I get to the hospital, one of the guys in the back of the ambulance with me says, "Sir, you're having a cardiac event. You're having a heart attack." I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" I mean, that was not within the realm of possibility. It was like just unbelievable, and so I was having a heart attack. And they, my cardiologist actually happened to be the guy on call that night, and they did it like exploratory surgery where it's like they put a camera up into my heart, and they found a blockage, and they put a stent in, and then after that I appeared to be fine. And it's like kind of like a fairly normal thing at this point, where they find the blockage, they put a stent in, and you're okay. Mm-hmm. But then, like, I forget if it's several hours later or the next morning or something, they told me, actually your heart's not functioning as well as it should. We're going to have to do a second procedure. And when they did that, everything went to hell.
Wow.
And I was put on a ventilator and shipped off from the Delray Medical Center to the Cleveland Clinic.
Wow.
And I did not know any of that was happening. I was unconscious the whole time. But I was on a ventilator for something like 5 days. And, it's almost like a little bit like a Damar Hamlin situation with, the people that knew me were like, watching me on this ventilator, not knowing if I was going to survive. And it looked bleak. I didn't know this at the time. Then there came a time where I became consciously aware I was on a ventilator and my life was in grave danger. And when I became aware of that, I'm thinking like, oh my God, this can't be happening. I'm too young to die. I want to see my kids. I want to, spend time with my girlfriend. I want to marry her. All these things I want to do. And I recovered, as you can see. My heart actually, I got off the ventilator. My heart actually was in pretty good shape. But it turned out my kidneys shut down in the process of the heart attack, and they did not recover. So they put me on dialysis. So I was in a hospital for 3.5 weeks, and then a rehab center for almost 2 weeks because I couldn't walk. After being in the hospital, in the bed, I could not walk. I continued dialysis for a few weeks after getting home, and my kidneys recovered, and I got off dialysis. And so, it was actually pretty miraculous. I'm lucky to be here. The whole time in the hospital and rehab it was like going through hell. But knowing how lucky I was to be alive made it really easy to deal with being, going through hell.
Yeah, definitely. It's a hell of a story, and I'm glad you're alive. I know Ron Chandler actually told some of us about it because, like you said, you didn't have my phone number. You texted a couple of people. You texted Ron, and Ron started telling us. We started reaching out to you. I had some guys that were saying, Larry hasn't made a move in the Diamond in like 4 weeks. What's going on? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I think he's fine. But then I found out, and when you did contact me the first time, you were like, my teams are done, but that was the least of your worries at the time.
Right, exactly. You don't really care. Yeah, what happened my brother, when this happened, my brother flew down, and also I have a cousin who lives in Boca, and they were at the hospital. I can't remember if it was before the second procedure or what, but they were in the hospital with me, and I asked them to contact some people. I gave them my phone, and I gave them a list of people I wanted them to contact and tell them what's going on. And I gave them, I think I gave them Chandler's name and Steve Gardner, because I knew the two of them would get the word out to everybody. So when I finally recovered, and when I was finally well enough to like start looking at my cell phone in the hospital bed, I was expecting to see like a bunch of messages from, various baseball or fantasy people, and there weren't any. And that's when I talked to my brother. I found out what happened is Chandler and Gardner are not in my cell phone. I only had their emails. So they were never contacted. Nobody knew.
Yeah. Wow. Crazy stuff. All right. Let's talk about some fun stuff here. So you didn't join the NFBC until about 2009 or 2010. Like you said, you and I met each other in 2006. I remember talking to you like, man, if you're so good at that, you should get into the NFBC, and you liked labor and stuff like that. So why didn't you get into the NFBC earlier than like 2009 or 2010?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, a guy who searched out a game in 1990 and played, would have thought you would have heard of us, but it's all right. So your first live event experience was in New York City. I believe you did an auction. I believe you did the main event. Do you remember it? Do you remember where it was? And what was your thinking when you got to that?
I don't remember specifically, but I used to live in Schenectady, New York, which is like 3 hours from Manhattan. So I used to take the Amtrak train from Albany down to Manhattan. It was a really easy way of getting to the NFBC and NFFC, and also Tout Wars when I started doing Tout Wars. And I mean, I just remember the drafts as everybody else will say, they're a lot of fun. The guys are mostly great, but I don't remember anything specific about that first one.
Yeah. No, the camaraderie was good in New York. We had a lot of drafts going on at once and stuff. You also joined football, I believe, that same year. And I believe you were in our first Diamond football league as well. Again, surprised you didn't join us earlier since you like football so much.
Yeah, well, better late than never.
All right. So let's talk about, we talked about you had this heart attack. All your teams for baseball were pretty much gone. You still were battling to get healthy, yet you came back and played football, and you won both Diamond Leagues. You have now won 3 NFFC Diamond League titles. That's the most of any owner. Talk about that comeback, if you will, of winning football after that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, for a while, I wasn't sure if I would be healthy enough to do football.
Yep,
and
right.
If I hadn't got off the dialysis, I probably would not have been able to do football. Of course, again, that would have been the least of my worries. I could have been on dialysis forever, or looking at a kidney transplant. But when I got off dialysis in time, where I had plenty of time to prepare, I did my usual preparation. And one thing about the Diamond League is I've had, like, I would say, unusual luck in the Diamond League recently, because in 2020, 21, and 22, the last 3 years, I was in both Diamond Leagues. I made the playoffs in 5 out of the 6.
Mm-hmm.
And you might say, well, why is my Diamond League successful? I would say it's just a fluke, because I think everything is pretty much the same. Diamond League, Ultimate League, Main Event, Prime. It's really the same thing. So it's probably just a fluke. But in 2021, I made the playoffs. I got it written down here. I made the playoffs 5 out of 6 times. I guess it was maybe this was 19 to 21. I made the playoffs 5 out of 6 times, but I finished number 3 times and number 4 twice.
Oh yeah.
it was horrible. For people that don't know, the Diamond League, 4 teams make the playoffs, and the winner gets the big grand prize, and the second place prize is good, and third place gets something, and fourth place gets nothing. So having 5 teams, and you get 3/3 and 2/4, that really sucked. So last year I had two teams make the
Yep.
playoffs again, and I won both of them. That was like kind of like revenge, or
Yeah.
I was due for that.
You were due for it, definitely. Like you say, you kind of draft the same team. I mean, you have this formula. Everybody knows it. You like a top quarterback. You like to get a good kicker, such like that. But you had more success in the Diamond League than you do in the prime time. You probably draft the exact same way in the prime time. You just haven't had the same
Yeah,
luck, if you will, right?
I think it's just a fluke.
Yeah. Well, talk about the private leagues, because that Diamond and you're into Platinum, those are good, tough leagues. Tell me what you like about those private leagues where, again, we pay the top 3 out of 12. You got a 1 in 4 chance of winning money. What do you like best about those private leagues?
I like that it's the money makes it more meaningful. Just it makes the competition a little stiffer
Right.
and a little bit more interest. And it's just more to win one of those is more satisfying than winning a regular like main event or primetime league.
Yeah. Let's talk about your strategy building a football team first. Now, I know you like a top quarterback. You targeted Rodgers for a lot of years. I believe you like a good kicker. What is your formula to winning? As long as you've written the book, what is that formula in football?
Well, the formula in football, it's really the same as baseball, at least when you're talking about a snake draft. What I'm doing is I have something called a flow chart, and I do explain this in my book. And what I'll do is I take the values of all the players, and I look at their ADP, and I can map out based on ADP who might be available in certain rounds. So I don't like to draft anything until really close to the season starts. I know lots of people like to draft early and draft a million teams, and people are drafting now. That's not for me. I like to do it close to the year. And so I'll have recent ADP information, and I can kind of map out, okay, like in round 3, what tight ends might be there, what quarterbacks might be there, et cetera. And by mapping out the whole thing, it's not like I'm targeting a quarterback early or waiting on a running back or whatever. It just works out however it works out, where I can say, okay, if I'm probably going to be able to get this guy in round 2, let's say tight end, and then I get this wide receiver in round 3, and I'm going to have more points than if I do it like the other way around. So that's kind of how I do it.
Yeah. All right. So what's that core strategy for building a winning fantasy baseball team then?
Well, for a snake draft, it's the same thing. It's like, I map it out with the values and with the ADP to kind of see, okay, who might be there around 10, around 12, around 8, just through the whole thing. I just map it all out beforehand. And one thing that's easier about football is it's pretty much always points based. So it's really easy to figure out, okay, if I think a certain running back is going to rush for 1,000 yards and catch 20 passes and have 10 touchdowns, then you know exactly how many points that's going to equate to. Right. In baseball, when if you're doing a roto style baseball, the value formulas get really kind of confusing and difficult, because you say, well, if a guy hits 300 and he has 500 at bats, how valuable is that compared to somebody who hits 290 and they have 400 at bats? That's where it gets very complicated.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so you won the NFBC Diamond Baseball League title in 2021. That's a 15-team format. I'm sure you've never played a 15-team draft format before the NFBC. Do you like the 15-team format? And tell me what you like about it.
Well, I mean, I like the mixed league. I like the mixed league. You're not dealing with the scrub players. But between playing at 12 or 15 doesn't really matter too much to me. Same with football, playing like in the main event football with 14 teams instead of 12 doesn't really matter too much.
Okay, sounds good. You won your only NFBC main event league title in 2017. You've got 1 title. You've got 2 second place finishes, 3 third place finishes. I'm sure you want to win the overall title one day in that contest, right?
Of course. Of course.
And is it possible? I mean, that's a tough format, right?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of good competition. Yeah. And a lot of teams, a lot of good competition. There's a lot of good players who've never won it. if you look at the leaderboard now. I mean, look at the overall standings right now. If you look at the entire standings down to number 795 or whatever it is, you got a lot of good players. That last tier, those teams that are really bad, including me, you got a lot of names in there, like including me, with some teams that aren't doing well.
Yeah.
Last year I had an excuse. Last year I literally could not manage my team for like 6 weeks or more.
Yep.
So that was a good excuse. This year, you look at the standings and you say, "Oh my God, is Larry Schechter in the hospital again? Because this team sucked." No, I'm sucking all on my own.
Well, congratulations for sucking all on your own.
Thank you. I'm going to buy myself a trophy for.
Yeah. Put right on there. I'm sucking all on my own. There you go.
Yeah.
Hey, talk about FAB, because that's a big part of baseball, obviously, football too, very much. But how do you handle it with the leagues that you do? Do you have a certain strategy? I mean, some people are kind of scared off in these high stakes games because of FAB. What are your thoughts or advice on FAB?
I don't know that I really have much advice. It's a pain. There's just no way of knowing what other people are going to bid, and you bid $50 and somebody, I mean, just this last week in Tout Wars, Kyle Isbell was available in AL Tout Wars, and I think I bid 59 or something like that, and Rick Wolf and Glenn Colton bid 69.
Oh, wow.
And they got me, and I'm like, shit, had I known, would I have gone 70 if I had known? Of course, yeah, I would have.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's a pain. When Bryce Miller was available this year in the NFBC, I put a bunch of big bids in on Bryce Miller, and I got him on 3 teams. One team where I think I bid 362, which is the most I bid in any league. And the ones where I didn't bid 362, 3 of them I got them.
Yeah.
The one where I did bid 362, I lost a tiebreaker.
Oh, wow, 362. Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. All right, that's good stuff though on the NFBC, NFFC. All right, let's surprise some folks with one more factoid from you. You were a stand-up comic, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
Let's talk about it. And come on, throw a joke out there. Everyone can see that you're a stand-up comic here.
I always, for years, I thought of doing it, kind of wanted to do it. And then I ran a business for a long time. I sold it. And so I was retired for a while, and I decided just, I'm going to try it. So yeah. I took there was a local comedian, hosting classes, and I took a class. And I started going to open mics, and I was pretty good at it, actually. I got the DVDs to prove it.
All right. What'd you stop for then?
Well, going to different places. I don't even remember why I stopped. I guess I just had enough of it for a while. I did try, upstate New York, there were like a limited number of places that you could do it. I did go to New York City a couple of times. I went to Pennsylvania a couple of times. New York City was really interesting. I was at I forget which place it was, one of the comedy clubs in New York. And while I'm waiting to go up, the host comes out, starts the show, and he's talking to the audience. And you got, in Manhattan, what happens, which is different than anywhere I've been before, half the audience is from other countries.
Yeah.
So you got all the people from Germany and all these other places, and then you got half of the people who are American. So I get up there, I'm doing my normal stuff, and I had no idea this was going to happen, but I'm making reference to Michael Jackson or other people that or other certain things only American people know about. So I get to a punchline, and this half of the room is laughing, and the other half is silent, because the people from Australia and Germany don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
Interesting. All right, I got to ask you a question. I know you've been researching the history of the fantasy sports industry, looking into something at a project maybe. What have you learned about this great history and the influential people in the early years?
I'm learning some information, which I don't want to get into right now.
Okay, sounds good. All right, when are you coming back to the live events?
I think next spring. I've actually was thinking about that. Next spring, the NFBC, the NFBC. I'm pretty much planning on that at this point.
Cool. I think the schedule, it's not released yet by Major League Baseball, but they released the 2 games internationally, which is the 20th and 21st of March. So I think opening day will be Thursday, March 28th. In fact, today I was already looking for space in Las Vegas. So put it on your calendar, 28th through the, let's see what, we'll be there 21st through the 24th in Las Vegas of March.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
All
good.
right. All right. Well, good luck in all your leagues and stay healthy, my friend. It was good talking to you. I'm glad people got to know you a little bit more. They know your name, Larry Schechter. Now they see who you are. So good luck in all your leagues.
All right. Thanks, Greg.
All right. Thank you. All right. We're going to have a live stream draft Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Maddie Davis. It's the Beat Maddie Davis RotoWire Online Championship League. We're going to have it right here on the High Stakes Fantasy Network. Thanks for joining us tonight.